We are going to talk about exercises very soon, don't worry, but first let me just tell you about the sponsor of today's video. This is the Meta Quest 2. Now, I could do that cheesy thing where YouTubers awkwardly try and tie a product into the video, but for some reason when I watch other people do that, I feel physical pain. So I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to tell you about all the fitness apps that you can use to do workouts at home. If you're into that, be my guest. I've actually looked at a few. They look pretty good, to be fair. Instead, I'm going to tell you about something different because there's something that has genuinely improved my quality of life. So there's this app called Trip, and it takes you through these super immersive guided meditation sessions. Now, I've always wanted to get into a good meditation regimen, but never really managed any stretch of consistency. And I do feel like meditation's kind of like eating broccoli in it. You can't just do it once, man. You gotta be quite consistent to see the benefit. Anyway, I tried Trip. There's a free version, like a demo version, that you can try before you pay for the app. It's legit, right? Each session is a genuine experience. It's a journey through this Zen universe. I think they call them worldscapes. It's a Zen universe, that's what I'm saying. There are these in-app focus games and you just come out the other side feeling like the chillest dude that ever chilled since records of chillness began. So anyway, I've been doing that every day almost since I got this thing, and it's just really an enjoyable part of my day now. So I thought I'd tell you about that instead of pretending to enjoy cardio. Of course, that is just one of the many possibilities you can access from essentially the comfort of your own living room. If you want to do some workouts, or you want to work on a new skill, or you just want to connect with people, there is an ever-expanding library of apps and games that make all those things possible. So Meta Quest 2, thank you for sponsoring this video. Thanks for getting me into meditation, because look how chill I am. Okay, let's do the video. I don't believe you need a lot of exercise variety to build a solid physique, provided you choose those exercises well. Today I'm going to go through what my choices would be if I could only do 10 exercises for the rest of my life, and I'll even provide some rationale and reasoning, because otherwise it'd just be me saying stuff. Before I do that, let me just underline two very important points. First, choosing your exercises is really a very small piece of the puzzle. The hard but necessary part is getting better at them. More weight, more reps, etc. Now, getting better at an exercise takes time and consistency, something that you're going to be far less motivated to apply if you don't enjoy doing the exercise. So regardless of any biomechanical pros and cons of an exercise, how much you actually like doing it cannot be overlooked when choosing. Second, kind of following from that kind of a caveat, don't expect to enjoy something the very first time you do it. Getting good at something doesn't always follow from enjoying it. Sometimes you have to get good at it to enjoy it. So that's a chicken and egg scenario, and my point is, at least give exercises a chance. Persevere for a bit before you write them off, because one day your least favorite might become your favorite. All right, let's do it. So this is in no particular order. Number one, standing dumbbell overhead press, and this is a neutral to pronated grip. When you start out with a pronated grip, you're almost forced into holding the weights in front of you, and that means when you perform the rep, you're pressing up and back as opposed to straight up. You get a similar effect from a barbell overhead press, but for a different reason. This time because you have to initially press the bar in front of you to avoid knocking yourself out with the bar. The initial press is pretty much all front deltoid, but then to align your center of gravity, you have to bring the weight back, and it's this second part of the press that I think seems to involve a little more of the lateral deltoid. If you just place one hand on your shoulder and do this without weight, you'll see what I mean. That's why I'd choose this exercise, almost like a half Arnold press, over a typical beside the head dumbbell press. Barbell OHP is probably just as good from a muscle building standpoint, but I'd choose dumbbells because it's unilateral, which means theoretically it should be better for symmetry, and you have the option of switching to alternate if you start to struggle. And also because dumbbells just make it more convenient if you did want to finish up with a drop set or something like that. You just place them down, grab some more and crack on, rather than messing about with plates on a barbell. Number two, a 15-degree incline dumbbell press. Now, of course, we need a chest press, and I'd go for a very slight incline dumbbell press. Again, in the real world, the barbell version is probably just as good, but I prefer the range of motion available with dumbbells. Firstly, you can go deeper at the bottom because the bar isn't hitting your chest, but also you're not locked into that vertical path. So you can go from a wider to a narrower hand position, giving you a better contraction. Lastly, your grip doesn't have to be aligned. Now, the reason for this ever so slight incline is that I do want to shift some emphasis up towards the upper chest, but I don't want to overlap too much with my overhead press movement and bring my front delts in any more than I need to. Number 3, pull-up. For our vertical pull, I think it's pretty safe to say that the pull-up is superior to any cable or lat pull-down machine. Although assisted pull-ups can be a bit awkward, once you're able to do bodyweight pull-ups for sets in a hypertrophy rep range, and then eventually weighted pull-ups, you're really going to start seeing the benefit. For grip, my only warning will be to say don't go too wide, because that inevitably causes your elbows to flare and you end up pulling directly up and down in this frontal plane. Ideally, you want your elbows to be slightly in front of your torso, which you naturally start to get as you move your grip closer together. This is why I really rate a neutral grip if you have those handles available. Number 4, plate loaded row with chest support. Regardless of how good pull-ups are, you do probably need a row if you want to get enough work on those muscles in your mid and upper back. For this, I actually think machines can offer a better option than free weights. I like this plate loaded machine, but I think a T-bar machine row can be just as good and should probably be looked at as interchangeable, provided there is chest support. Firstly, you have that chest support, so you're not taking the tension of what can be quite a heavy weight entirely on your lower back. In free weight movements, that can limit your sets if your erectors get exhausted first, or at the very least, it can contribute quite significantly to the cardiovascular demand of the exercise, again, detracting from the row movement and meaning higher fatigue, longer rest periods, etc. Secondly, the resistance curve of these exercises better suits the strength curve. Now, the hardest part of a row, just like a pull-up, is the end of a rep. Because the weight in these exercises is actually moving in an arc, it somewhat accommodates for your change in strength throughout the rep. At the start, the weight is moving more perpendicular to the ground, so more directly against gravity. And at the end, it's moving more parallel to the ground, so less directly against gravity. Number 5, a Bulgarian split squat. Everyone knew this was coming. I'm going to breeze over it because I'm just repeating myself at this point. Advantages: it's unilateral, helps with even development, requires less spinal loading than a squat, reduces tendency for pelvic tilt like in a squat or leg press, huge range of motion if your mobility allows, only really challenged by, I would say, a hack squat. Highly adjustable, can change your stance for more glute or quad emphasis, although I would just recommend choosing what's comfortable and you'll develop both great. Like any exercises, there are certain disadvantages, but I think they're pretty insignificant. If I can be quite scientific for a second, or bro-sciencey, I suppose that's the term, let me just make this statement. If you get good at these, your legs will look sick, right? I just personally guarantee that. Sue me if they don't, you know what I mean? Now, they can feel weird and uncomfortable at first, but once you learn the movement, they feel very natural. Number 6, machine lateral raise. This is going in as my first isolation exercise because I think even though you could probably eventually build pretty great looking shoulders just with overhead presses, it's just much easier if you can do some form of lateral raise. Otherwise, you'll struggle to get enough lateral deltoid head activation to really see much improvement. Some would probably argue that if you're trying to be as minimal as possible with it, this might even be more important than the overhead press, and that an overhead press isn't technically necessary. But, you know, this list isn't in order. Thankfully, I don't have to make that call. I'm having both. For the second time in this list, we're going for a machine over a free weight alternative. I definitely think you can build great shoulders with dumbbell lateral raises, but you might have to do some mixture of partials and full reps, or employ some kind of cheat reps to get around the fact that they're so much easier at the start of the rep than they are at the end. Machines can offer an even resistance throughout, or if you really want to get technical, some will even allow you to place more emphasis towards the start of the rep. I think the handle and the pad machines are almost indistinguishable, and it might even come down to the specific brand of machine, but for me, a straight arm raise just feels slightly better, and I have to choose one. So that's what I'm choosing. Number 7, for my tricep isolation, I'm going to go with an overhead cable extension. If you're choosing one, again, not really sure what scenario that would be in, but if you are choosing one, then an overhead extension is going to be a better choice than a push down. Whilst I do like the lying dumbbell tricep extension, I think the overhead cable extension is, well, more overhead. There is a rabbit hole we could go down here about stretch-mediated hypertrophy, but that's probably for another day. I also just like the convenience of using cables. Again, it's helpful if you want to throw in a drop set at the end of your workout, which always feels good for triceps. Number 8, dumbbell curl. Honestly, I don't really care which bicep isolation I do, or which you do for that matter. I think a seated incline curl is a really good option technically, but sometimes you just want to curl some weight, and I think a simple standing alternate dumbbell curl gives you the best balance of control over your technique, resistance curve, and just raw potential for shifting some weight. End of the day, just like the Bulgarian split squats, get good at these and your arms are going to look impressive. There's really not much need to complicate it any further. Number 9, Smith/machine calf raise. The most boring exercise on this list by a country mile, but for some of us it is sadly quite necessary. For calf exercises, a combination of straight leg and bent leg is probably best, but choosing only one, it's going to be a straight leg hands down. Increasing your range of motion so that you're getting a good calf stretch at the bottom is going to improve the exercise yet still. So I'd say use a ramp or even a block if you're on a Smith machine, or use a machine as a step. You do have quite a high elasticity in your Achilles tendon, so you want to try and avoid using that too much and bouncing up and down. My advice to you, if you already have good calves naturally, is don't train them. You literally just could be doing far better things with your life, and if you are genetically blessed with them, like, do those far better things. Like, if they look fine and in proportion already, then please spend your finite existence wisely, aka not training calves. Number 10, hyperextension. Finally, we have a hip hinge movement, which I think is less of a muscle builder per se, and really just more of a holistic exercise that's going to help strengthen your posterior chain and stop you from snapping your shit up in daily life. You'll of course still get some nice glute and hamstring activation, and if you apply progressive overload as you would with any other exercise, you can certainly build those muscles. Now, I do think RDLs are a great exercise. It's just, if I had to choose only one, I would probably go with hyperextensions, because you have the option of changing the angle, which of course then changes the resistance curve. And RDL is hardest at the bottom, which technically isn't a bad thing in this case, but there's almost no resistance at the top. That's pretty minor, and in the real world, I still definitely do RDLs and hyperextensions, and I'd say you should do that too. And that is 10. Obviously, in an ideal world, I would probably have liked to include a leg extension to complement my split squats, a leg curl because hamstrings are definitely neglected in this list, and of course an ab exercise, for which I would probably go for reverse crunches. Either way, I think if you just spent your days trying to get better at those 10 exercises, eventually you'd get to a point where you have a pretty solid, fairly complete physique. And with the addition of those 3 honorable mentions, you could basically get as good physique as you wanted just doing those. So I hope you found that helpful or interesting in any way. Of course, let me know in the comments if there are any you would add on the list. See you later.
Joey Lenny is my hero.